Selner's power. She gently took his hands and instructed him to look directly into her eyes. This was the first step. Watching the scene unfold, Connor smirked. Jinwoo has kept his cool until now, but once the first stage is complete, he'll be the one reaching out to us. No, if he's the impatient type, he might even sign the papers right here and now. Connor also noted that Goto Ryuji was strong enough to be considered a national-level hunter, yet this man, Sung Jin-woo, had achieved what Goto never could. He successfully cleared the Jeju Island raid with powers unlike anything seen before. As Connor wondered just how powerful Jin-woo truly was, Mrs. Selner successfully entered his mind. But the moment she did, her eyes widened in horror. Inside Jin-woo's mind, a vast, suffocating darkness loomed. As she inspected it, she suddenly felt something staring back at her. The darkness moved, slowly at first, then closer and closer. Glowing crimson eyes pierced through the abyss. Terror seized her. With a scream, Mrs. Selner clutched her head in agony. Immediately, the agents in the room drew their weapons, aiming at Jin-woo. "You bastard! What did you do to Mrs. Selner?" But before they could act, Connor shouted furiously, "Stop! Are you out of your minds? Do you even know who this man is?" He turned to them, his voice cold. "If you're that worried, go check on her instead of pointing your guns at him." The agents hesitated, but ultimately lowered their weapons. Connor sighed and turned to Jin-woo. "I sincerely apologize. My men overstepped their bounds." Jin-woo, still confused about what had just happened, simply shrugged it off. Connor, gripping one of the agent's shoulders tightly, warned them, "If you had done this to Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigang, you'd all be dead right now." With the room still on edge, Connor finally approached Mrs. Selner, who was trembling, covering her head in sheer terror. Sweat dripped from her face as she stared at Jin-woo, unable to hide her fear. Connor then asked Jin-woo to reschedule since Mrs. Selner is not feeling okay. Jin-woo then escorted out by Adam White. Shifting back to Mrs. Selner, who had been petrified, Connor took a deep breath. "Mrs. Selner? What happened?" Her hands shook violently as she stammered, then screamed, "He's a king, and a powerful one at that!" Connor's expression darkened. "Does that mean he's as strong as a national-level hunter?" Mrs. Selner quickly shook her head. "I don't know. I've never experienced anything like this before." Taking another shaky breath, she continued, "Jin-woo is a king. All right, but not an ordinary one." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "When I looked at him, something else looked back. And I'm not talking about Sung Jin-woo." Her entire body trembled. Then, her voice barely above a whisper, she muttered, "There's no limit to his power." Setting the stage for part